Retrograde Amnesia is a member of the Greenlit Podcast Network, a coalition of creator-owned podcasts focused on video gaming, entertainment, and pop culture. Go to greenlitpodcast.com to find out about all the great shows on the network. Hey, Eric.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, we just completed a 55-episode series on Xenogears. Do you want to do another podcast?
Yeah, let's do it again.
Okay, well, you should also head to patreon.com/retroam to support us if you want to.
I do want.
Okay, good. Would you like to hear some hot sounds that I've recorded?
From Xenogears?
Yes.
Yes.
Welcome to Retrograde Amnesia, a comprehensive podcast where we discuss classic JRPGs, chapter by chapter, beat by beat. Let us begin a fantastical exegesis of Squaresoft's Chrono Cross, released on the Sony PlayStation in North America in the year 2000. My name is Chris. I'm joined tonight by Eric. Hey, Eric.
Hey, Chris, get your thesaurus.
Yeah, how many times have I used exegesis in the past couple of weeks?
7, I'm counting.
7? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I like the word.
It's a great word. I have no idea what it means.
We are also joined tonight by The RealNet, a collective of patrons who are listening to us record live. You too can join the conversation at patreon.com/retroam.
We are also joined by the FakeNet, our post-production AI companion, whose voice we have upgraded.
Ooh, the FakeNet has received an upgrade.
I think.
Initializing FakeNet.
I have been told not to use profanity or insult the hosts for the first episode. Also,
well, I used to sound like this.
I am British now.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear your voice, FakeNet. You sound terrific, as usual.
You still sound like Chris.
Or even better.
Sorry.
So, Eric, we may have some new listeners hopping on for our Chrono Cross journeys. So
what are they in store for, Chris?
They're in store for some shit.
Okay.
So please, as they say in the classic film Jurassic Park, hold on to your butts, all of them. Let's give a little bit of a reintroduction to this podcast. It's called Retrograde Amnesia, if you haven't figured that out by now. This is a weekly podcast that extensively covers a single classic JRPG. The method we developed over the course of our 55-episode series on Xenogears is to break down the game in a linear, moment-to-moment fashion. Think of it as a line-by-line analysis of an ancient text, an exegesis, if you will, Eric. We also go in-depth on the story, dialogue, mechanics, and try and fail a lot to avoid as many non-sequiturs as possible. We use sound and music to highlight moments and to help us unpack the devices that the game uses to tell its story. We don't spoil the game beyond the particular section that we're covering, and we occasionally stop and take inventory of the larger plot and themes. Eric, how'd I do? Is that this podcast?
I think that's this podcast.
Okay.
When we started out, it was a Twitter joke that went too far to try and figure out what was going on in Xenogears as two adults as opposed to two children.
Yes. And I think we did that effectively.
Mm-hmm. People have told us it functions as a substitute for replaying the game or a nice companion piece to first-time players.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's a good point. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. If you want to replay Chrono Cross along with us, please do. If you just want to remember Chrono Cross along with us, then please do as well.
But we should be avoiding major spoilers as we play the game.
Right.
I mean, we're going to describe the intro movie in a second, which I think might have major spoilers in it, but...
Yeah, that's true. So, tell us about Chrono Cross, Eric. You got some facts.
Yes, we're going to do a brief overview of this first before we get into the first part of the game. Chrono Cross was released November 18th, 1999 in Japan, and August 15th, 2000 in the United States. Like Xenogears, Squaresoft told Europe to fuck off.
Yeah, sorry, Europe.
Chrono Cross was the first entry of Square's Summer of Adventure 2000 promotion that also included Legend of Mana, releasing on June 6th, and Threads of Fate on July 19th. If you pre-ordered one of these games, you would receive a 5-song sampler soundtrack. If you pre-ordered all 3 from the same place, you would receive an ugly knapsack.
Ooh.
When I pre-ordered Chrono Cross, it came with a special clock that I kept sealed to be valuable one day. Chris, I have it here.
Oh, you do?
Us. Yes.
Is it an object of power?
I think so. It's sitting on the table. We're hoping it charges us up.
Okay, good.
Slight anecdote. At one point, our mutual friend Josh saw this in my room sealed when we were still kids, and he said, "You shouldn't have that. Chris Stone should have that."
Mm-hmm. I should have it. And guess what? Roughly, 18 years later, I have it in my house because we're going to do a podcast on this game.
It's finally come home.
Yes, fate.
The Summer of Adventure, for some reason, did not include Vagrant Story on May 15th or Parasite Eve 2 on September 20th, but what a powerful summer for Squaresoft.
Yes, Very powerful summer. That was the tail end of the quote golden age.
Yes. Did you play any of these in this powerful summer?
I rented Threads of Fate. I bounced off of it quickly because it's weird.
A 1-disc Squaresoft game.
Yeah.
No, sir.
What the hell? I played a considerable amount of Vagrant Story, but never completed it. That game's a hell of an adventure, but I did not play Parasite Eve 2.
Did you dip into Saga Frontier 2 earlier that year?
Oh, that was also a rental.
And nothing on Legend of Mana for you? Secret of Mana?
Oh,
Super
Legend
fan?
of Mana, yes. Legend of Mana, I spent a good amount of time with that. I was, at the time, disappointed that it wasn't like the original, because it's not like the original. It's actually quite weird.
Got that good talking tree, though, right?
It does. It is a really good game that I've gone back to since then and played a couple times here and there, and it's quite good.
So Chrono Cross was made by Square Product Division 3. It was directed by Masato Kato, who was the story planner on Chrono Trigger, script writing on Radical Dreamers, event planner on Xenogears, and would go on to be the plot conceiver in Final Fantasy XI. He most recently directed Another Eden, a mobile game we have not played.
I downloaded it once.
Yeah, how'd that go?
I deleted it later.
Excellent.
In our previous podcast, we became quite familiar with Kato's style in Xenogears. In the English credits, he's actually credited with the script in Xenogears, but we know from developer interviews that his primary role was event planner.
And Roller Coaster Denier.
Yes, indeed. We'll get to that later. It's generally accepted that Kato is responsible for the more pastoral, lighthearted, and stargazy moments from Xenogears, but this
You mean the entirety of Chrono Cross?
Yeah. I mean, that's my memory here, right, of Chrono Cross. But that is more of an extrapolation of the contrasting styles of Xenogears director Tetsuya Takahashi and Kato himself. In an interview, Kato said of his style, "I wrote them to my own personal tastes, or maybe I should learn to listen more to what other people tell me." Laughs. In Xenogears, Kato helped write scenarios for Lahan Village, where, as Eric mentioned, he wanted to put a roller coaster there, which is something that the rest of the team told him, "I don't think Takahashi would like that because this is a dark game." He also wrote Shavat. He wrote scenario for Choo Choo and Maria Balthazar's story, which, if you think about how all of those areas contrast with the remainder of Xenogears, then you can kind of see where we're going with this. If you can't see where we're going with this, well, we have a 55-episode podcast. Please refer to that.
Also, inadvertently, we're probably going to compare a lot of Chrono Cross to Xenogears just because we thought about Xenogears every day for the last year.
Yeah, and as much as I try not to think about Xenogears every day anymore, because we're done with all of that work for the most part, I still do.
Yep.
It's part of me. Another interesting thing about Kato, he is not credited in Final Fantasy VII except for special thanks. He did more than special thanks. In an interview in 1999, he said that the village where Cloud becomes a vegetable when he falls into the live stream and the episode of Cloud and Tifa on the dawn before the final battle are the scenes that he wrote. All he got was a special thanks for that. I don't know if he was splitting his time, but he was back and forth between Final Fantasy VII and Xenogears because those games were in development at the same time.
In that scene with Cloud, he said Xenogears with a Z.
Yeah, exactly. Kato's most famous pre-Chrono Cross credit is, of course, Chrono Trigger. He joined Square roughly halfway through the project and is credited as the story planner. In a 1999 interview performed by Yasunori Mitsuda's company, we found this on Chrono Compendia, which is a website I think we're going to refer to a lot because there's a lot of good resources there. In this interview, Kato explains his contribution to Chrono Trigger. He says, quote, "Mr. Yuji Horii," that's the Dragon Quest guy, "wrote the basic plotline first. Following that, it was edited and rewritten by me. And even further on that, the sub-scenarios were created by directors Mr. Tokita and Mr. Kitase. But the 12,000 BC part was 100% my original idea. After writing the story for this part, I also did the events for Zeal Palace, the dungeons, and everything else by myself." And I think it's interesting, too, to point out here that him saying that he did Zeal Palace by himself makes a lot of sense when you think about the vibe of Shavat in Xenogears.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
they're
make
almost
another floating city with a history in ancient past.
Yes, and a bunch of wistful NPCs that are thinking about the state of humanity and where they're going and where they've been.
And their sins.
Of course, he also worked on Radical Dreamers, a text-based adventure with some background graphics that was originally released in Japan on the Satellaview system.
I'm sure we'll get to it, but every interview I read with him, he doesn't seem fond of his work on Radical Dreamers. He considers it unfinished.
Yeah, this game is a spin-off of the Chrono series. It is the precursor, sort of, to Chrono Cross. Its main characters and plot elements were adopted and later written into the framework for the Chrono Cross plot. A quote, he says, "In Radical, I wrote most of the main story after drafting out the concepts to the sub-stories. Example, the elopement episode and the space detective episode, which is something I really want to get to at some point, I guess. Bonus episode.
Yep.
I left them to the staff to take care of. Oh, wait, everything except for the sunflower episode. That one I didn't touch. I let Mr. Shimamoto do whatever he wanted on that one. I sort of avoid having any part in that episode. So, not having any experience with Radical Dreamers myself, I really want to know about the sunflower episode, so maybe one day we'll get to that. Who do you want to go to next, Eric?
Producer Hiromichi Tanaka. He also directed Trials of Mana and produced Xenogears and Threads of Fate. He would also go on to work on Final Fantasy XI. Chrono Cross has art by two people, Yasusuke Hone, who is the map designer for Chrono Trigger, the art director of Xenogears, and would also be the art director for Xenosaga Episode 1, Baten Kaitos Origins, and Xenoblade 2. He is currently employed by Monolith Soft.
He is most notably not Akira Toriyama.
Yeah, right. Also has art by Nobueru Yuki, who worked mostly in anime, movies, and OVA. He also did character designs for Trials of Mana, Solito Robo, and Ragnarok Online.
Oh, hey, that's a game I spent. How many years of my life did I spend?
7,000 of hours.
4, 5, 7, 6 hours. I don't know. I spent a lot of time on that game.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't good.
Jesus Christ, Chris. And it has music composed by, as we said, Yasunori Mitsuda, who, amongst other things, has done Xenogears, Chrono Trigger, Radical Dreamers, Soma Bringer, Xenosaga Episode 1, Another Eden, Sands of Destruction, both with Kato, and, of course, Mario Party.
Yes, of course.
And finally, the localization team was led by Richard Honeywood.
Ah, he's back.
Chris, guess the time in months this game took to localize. This shocked me.
6 months?
3 months.
3 months, wow.
Yeah.
So, interesting thing about Richard Honeywood that I discovered when I was researching this game, his difficult experience with Xenogears was sort of the catalyst for Square bolstering their localization efforts.
Yeah.
He was like, that shit you just put me through with Xenogears.
I can't do that anymore.
We can't do that. We need to have shared offices. I need to have access to the development team. I need to have people to work for me. Shout out to Richard Honeywood for making localization a thing that needs to happen, because now that's there's like huge departments for that.
Yeah.
There's companies for that.
According to a 2006 interview with Edge, Kato actually sat down with Honeywood and helped him rewrite sections of the story when Honeywood noticed some contradictions. According to a 2011 article at 1UP by Wes Fenlon, these are direct quotes, with the days of Herculean single-headed translation efforts a la Xenogears fading away, Honeywood was able to put his programming ability to use in a variety of ways, including the creation of Chrono Cross's auto-accent tool. In Japanese, the accents for Chrono Cross's massive cast were created fairly simply by modifying verb endings and the way characters address Surge. That wasn't going to fly in English. Quote, we didn't have the time or the PlayStation memory to retranslate the same line up to 40 times for each character. So I took a stab at a system that would try to change the text in real time into differing accents or speech patterns to match the colorful array of characters that made up the cast of the game. I composed an initial characterization guide for all the characters. Then I looked at what patterns of speech we would need to accomplish for those accents and broke it down to the syllable or phenome level. I made a list of each phoneme, phenomenon. I don't know that word. Phoneme, fake net. What the hell does that mean?
Initializing fake net.
A phoneme is any of the perceptually distinct units of sound in a specified language that distinguish one word from another. For example, P, B, D, and T in the English words pad, pat, bad, and bat.
Could this be our first appearance of the fake net on the Chrono Cross series?
Other than its introduction, sure.
Yes.
I wouldn't have to do my job if you were better at yours.
I made a list of each phenon, that word,
Phoneme.
in English that would get changed according to different accents or speech impediments so that the translators and I could replace those phonemes with tokens in our text. At runtime, these tokens would be changed to match the speaker. So basically, the PlayStation had, I think, 1 megabyte of RAM total.
Yeah.
And this was a way to solve that in a time way and also not take up a lot of space.
That solution could only be implemented by somebody who had both the localization experience and the programming experience.
From what I read about Honeywood, he more or less fell into localization by just working on Japanese games and just, like, he had a programming background before this.
Yeah, I think you're right. He applied for a job at Square and ultimately got stuck on localization, and that became his forte, I guess, in this case.
But it's funny, the accents in Chrono Cross are kind of infamous as like a love 'em or hate 'em type thing, because you find out all the characters kind of say the same thing, but it's a unique and efficient way to add personality to them despite that.
Yeah. It's better than the alternative, which would be to just have the exact same dialogue.
Yeah. All right, Chris, share me your personal memories of how you came to this game.
I was super big into Chrono Trigger. I don't know if you know this about me. I really like Chrono Trigger back in the day. So I bought this day one. This game made me drop Diablo 2 forever.
Wow.
So
when did Diablo 2 come out? That was also 2000.
Same
right?
year, yeah, earlier that year. So I was big into Diablo 1 when it was first around, and then I instantly got into Diablo 2, and this game I was kind of going back.
Would you say you were part of the Diablos core?
I guess so. If I was big on the godly play of the whale.
Mm-hmm.
Only the real ones will know about that one. I used to be the guy on the internet who would fight about whether Chrono Cross was better than Chrono Trigger, and I was on Team Chrono Cross for a very long time.
Yeah, everybody has to choose a side.
I got really into the lore, and I try to make sense of it all the time. And I remember very, very little of it today, but I know there's some dragons and some connections to Chrono Trigger characters, but that's about it.
So do you remember how long it took you to play this game the first time? Did you blast through it with your endless summer?
I think I did. I think I must have played through...
That was the summer you would have graduated from high school, right?
Yeah. So that was kind of like New Horizons, New Chronos, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I also used half my mental energy in 2001 to headcanon Magus into this game.
And in 2000? Oh, 2001.
Yeah,
next year.
I was still thinking about it in 2001,
right.
Yeah. And I'm going to do that again on this podcast, by the way.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so
there's ample evidence.
Yeah. So what about you?
So I bought it on launch day because of hype from all you idiots. Like I had met Chris summer of 2000 and basically got a whole new set of friends that year. And I had played Xenogears, Panzer Dragoon Saga, Final Fantasy VII, all those at that point, and I think Lunar. But I was told about this older game called Chrono Trigger.
It's good.
Yeah. So I bought a Super Nintendo and I bought Chrono Trigger as my first ever purchase from eBay. I was like, well, I got to play this before I play this Chrono Cross game. It's the next big Square game. And the save battery in that cart died after a month.
Oh.
And I didn't want to buy Chrono Trigger again, but I heard about Final Fantasy Chronicles.
Yeah.
The PlayStation kind of port with anime cutscenes.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't come out until June 2001.
The cutscenes were good. The load times were horrendous.
Yes, that and Final Fantasy VI. Not the way you want to play those games, but I suffered through it because that was normal to me, sort of. So I didn't end up playing Chrono Trigger until June 2001.
Wow.
Then I gave my copy of Chrono Cross that I bought day one and got my nice clock and soundtrack.
Yeah, congrats.
I gave it to our friend Len, and he kept it for a year.
Oh.
So I didn't play Chrono Cross until summer of 2002.
Ah.
As far as how it went, I remember overwhelming tropical themes, like very humid and watery. And along with Final Fantasy X, I always associated both games with the beach and with water.
Yeah, that's fair too.
Very archipelago sense to both of them. I remember there were criticisms of there being too many characters, but I never remember that bothering me, partly because I'd never seen a game do that before, and or I was really into Pokemon at the time, and of course, had to catch them all.
I was a pretty big fan of Suikoden. The multiple character thing was okay with me, but it didn't work in the same way as it works in the Suikoden games. I didn't get the sense of a community. Like in Suikoden, your characters become a community. In this game, I never felt that.
I don't know if there's much interplay between the characters.
Yeah,
you mention it.
Absolutely.
So I remember the battle system being revelatory and marveling at how player-friendly it was. I remember being blown away that people were healed after every battle.
Yeah.
Like how it just solved so many of these kind of annoyances that JRPGs had built into that point that it required the players to do for no real reason but to waste their time, and how this game, as a mature product on an aging piece of hardware, took advantage of lessons learned over the last generation.
Yeah, and it learned a lot of lessons, and no one learned any lessons from this game, I don't think.
Nope.
Very few, I guess.
Specific memories, I remember a battle with someone named Miguel taking me weeks.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I remember
someone named Glenn having, quote, dual Einlancers.
Yeah, Glenn's sick.
And then at one point I thought of this as my favorite RPG. And then I also remember a battle between two of our friends determining whether Serge's name was pronounced Serge like the drink or Sergey.
Who said Sergey?
Jason. Arguing with Josh about what it should be in his room.
I mean, I love Jason, but fuck Jason in this case.
So we're doing Serge, right?
Yeah.
This isn't a Citan Shaitan thing, is it?
I don't know. At least this time we have people to correct us that are listening to us record live.
And I have one final story that I love before we get to this game. Do you remember Chuck Norris facts?
Yeah, I remember Chuck Norris facts, and I remember when Chuck Norris facts became tiresome.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was in their infancy, like 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
And there's 4 of us at Taco Bell. You might have actually been there. But Nick, our buddy Nick, was essentially doing Chuck Norris facts with a character called Dario.
Oh, yeah.
About how badass he was. You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
And I know Josh was there too. But this is funny for Chris and no one else. But Nick was talking about like how badass Dario, like basically Chuck Norris facts, like obscene alert, like biggest dick ever, Dario stuff. And then we're at Taco Bell waiting in line. And then Nick's just saying all this shit about Dario. And then I noticed the cashier's name is Dario. And we're talking about how we wish we could get Dario in our party and all these like absurd statements. And the guy's just looking at us, and me and our buddy Josh are losing it while Nick just keeps talking. Anyway, I'm sure you can imagine how amazing of a coincidence that was.
I love that memory. I wasn't even there, but I love it. I'm going to take it as my own.
Yeah. So that's it. Are we into the actual game now, or do you have any lingering? You've only played this game once, correct?
Oh, I played it through multiple times.
Okay, like
And-
over the years? Like, what's the most recent time you've played it?
Oh, it was probably like 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
There's a period of time when I lived in a dorm room with a roommate who also played, the guy that you were just referencing, Josh, who also played the same kind of games as me. So he would play through Chrono Cross and I would watch him. So I have no idea if I was actually playing at that time or if I was just observing. But when you live in a tiny-ass dorm room with somebody, you kind of get that experience
Memories
as well.
fade over 17 years. I've only played it once, and then I did some New Game Plus stuff, but I didn't ever complete it.
The award-winning Go Nintendo podcast covers the latest Nintendo news while also diving into what's hot in pop culture, music trivia, hands-on impressions, and so much more. Hopefully we can make you laugh, too. You'll find new episodes of the Go Nintendo podcast on the Greenlit Podcast Network every single week.
Hey folks, it's Asif Khan, CEO and Editor-in-Chief over at shacknews.com. Give a listen to our 9 to 5 Elon podcast about Tesla and electric vehicles and all sorts of cool stuff over there on the Greenlit Podcast Network.
So, Eric,
Yeah,
would you like to get into this video game now?
the video game that at one point I considered my favorite RPG.
Yeah, I did too. Why did we do that? I guess that's why we're doing this podcast. We're going to
Yeah,
figure
we're
it
going
out.
to figure it out.
Yeah, 'cause
we'll
I-
see if it holds.
That faded. So, Eric, let's get into this video game.
What's the first thing you see? Don't get this wrong.
Uh,
It took me aback. I forgot about this. When you power on, what's the first thing you see?
Sony PlayStation.
After the PlayStation intro. Although you answered technically correctly. Thank you, pedant.
Published by Square Electronic Arts, LLC.
Yes. When
Got it.
Electronic Arts, when the EA was helping Square publish stuff in North America.
That was actually a question I was going to bring to you tonight. Was that actually Electronic Arts?
Yes.
Okay,
It was that Electronic Arts. They published that in Final Fantasy X, I think, or co-published. I don't know what Square's distribution was like at that point, but apparently it was suffering.
Initializing FakeNet.
Under the terms of the agreement, Electronic Arts own 30% of Square EA, and Square own 30% of EA Square. Following the announcement of the merger between Square and former competitor Enix in 2003, Square purchased back Electronic Arts' stake in Square EA, and folded it back into Squaresoft.
Really interesting. Well, this would have been at the same point in time in which the company itself was starting to suffer because...
They were pouring money into Final Fantasy, the movie?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so here we are.
And then it's Squaresoft waves into existence, transitioning from blue to its traditional white logo. So
Yeah.
then we get a CG intro movie. Would you like me to go hard on this, or shall you?
Go hard.
Time's Scar plays.
Yes, this is a great track.
It is. We see a desk illuminated only by candlelight. It's surrounded by a bunch of books in one small chest, in addition to the candle lamp. One of the books unbounds and magically opens. Text appears on the screen.
This is the second best book pages blowing in the wind in video games.
What's the first?
Final Fantasy VI ending. Spoilers.
Cool. The text says, "What was the start of all of this? When did the cogs of fate begin to turn? Perhaps it is impossible to grasp that answer now. From deep within the flow of time, but for a certainty back then, we loved so many, yet hated so much. We hurt others and were hurt ourselves. Yet even then, we ran like the wind, whilst our laughter echoed under cerulean skies." I thought that was poetry when I was 17, man.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, how much did that make you feel when you were 17, 18 years old?
Quite a bit.
How does it make you feel now?
It starts off strong, but I think
yeah.
the translation gets a little hurt at the end.
The first two lines are great because
Yeah.
those are some meditations that you can have pretty much about anything, about life in general.
Mm-hmm.
What was the start of all this? When did the cogs of fate begin to turn? It's like one of those things when you wake up in the middle of the night, like, how the fuck did I get here?
Yeah.
How did I get here into my basement with Eric putting Chrono Cross memorabilia on my table and us doing a podcast in front of like 11 people?
As the older I get, I have a lot more how did I get here sequences, like I just woke up in my life.
Yeah, it is sort of a existential crisis kind of thing that I have every now and then, which probably parlays well into us doing a podcast about this particular video game because I think that's what this game is meditating about.
And then the line, "We hurt others and we're hurt ourselves." As a 19-year-old, which I was at the time playing this game, I was like, oh man, that's like relationships. It was profound.
You're right. Yeah, I like it. Overall, I give it a thumbs
It's
up.
a good intro quote in a time when all games didn't necessarily open with quotes like that.
Yep. And
So-
at that point, that's when the music begins to ramp up and we get
Yeah.
a bunch of quick cuts of the events that will soon unfold, basically.
Yes,
right?
these are all CG slices from Chrono Cross, and we made a point about this last time on our last podcast, but Squaresoft CG in the late 90s was what you played the game for, almost.
Yeah, it was Squaresoft or Blizzard. Those are the two good ones.
Yeah, Squaresoft CG, this is before, I mean, it didn't look like Pixar stuff, like A Bug's Life or Toy Story, I guess, but it was still the best you could get in a video game.
Oh, for sure.
So the first scene we see is Surge being surrounded by swirling ether at the beach. We move on to weird tow dragons flying in the sky. Then there's a strange device. Then it's Surge on a sailboat. Then there's a lavender flame shooting a laser up into a clouded sky. Then there are close-ups of dragons. Then it's Surge getting close to flame art. Then a panning up shot of a girl on a cliff. Then there's blue clouds over a castle on the moon. Then there's Surge rushing into battle. Then there's an explosion. Then there is a harlequined clown leaping into the moon. Then there's an actual panther. Then the clown opens her eyes. There's a figure being engulfed in magic and falling to their knees. The girl is hugging Surge in pain. A strange dragon planetoid. A dragon burning up in the atmosphere upon re-entry.
Dragons.
Bahamut Zero. A cat man staring into the distance. A blue element. There's Surge grabbing his head in pain as he falls to his knees. Then the girl is staring out into the ocean and turning around and reaching out her hand. The camera goes into her pupil to reveal Surge, also turning around into the clown, also turning around into the cat man, then into baby Surge, then into a close-up of Surge half smiling. After that, there are very quick smash cuts. There are 3 black and white figures in front of a cave. There's a dragon screaming, there's a bloody blade, a dragon body shot, and then the penultimate image is a child's drawing of a pair of eyes with glasses and brown hair with the word Luca below it. Flames are reflected in this drawing. Then it ends on an eye with Surge once again engulfed in magic as the words Chrono Cross fade into the screen. The sea then turns into a compass that points west and south, but it's marked the Roman numerals for 9 and 6.
Let's talk about that CG real quick. Do you think they put that together because it was going to be on a demo disc?
Probably. Because was it on a demo disc? Was this like Square was notorious for putting games in demo discs around them with like Parasite Eve?
Yeah, I think this was on a demo disc. I could be wrong. But
Initializing fakenet.
Chris is correct. Included with Vagrant Story was the Squaresoft 2000 Collector's CD Volume 3. Among other demos and videos, it included this opening CG movie for Chrono Cross.
it felt very trailer-like.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, like, there's nothing original here. I think that's all cut from the game.
It absolutely is, and I feel like they did that to convince me to buy the game, but I've already bought the game.
Yeah, right?
So it was weird.
I mean, there was still, this is basically an attract mode, and these still played at, like, GameStops.
Yeah, it's
on kiosks.
It's really effective, too. And then we go to the title screen.
Yes.
The title screen...
Excellent press start screen music.
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful. It's called The Sea of Eden is the name of that track, actually.
Really? I've got Garden of the Gods.
Already.
Did we check and see if there's multiple translations for the soundtrack?
I was going off Amazon Music's, which is the same as Spotify, so...
Okay, I cross-referenced 2 different YouTube listings for the soundtrack, and they both said Garden of Gods.
Okay, well...
But, I mean, we'll see. Either way, the right music will be played.
It's true, and the fake net will tell us which one is right.
Initializing fake net.
You were both right. The song titles were retranslated when they appeared on streaming platforms.
This song is light guitar strumming along with the choral arrangement. This is exactly what I want to be listening to if I ever scuba dive in 15 feet of sunny water.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the title screen is. It's a dynamic shot of the ocean and aquatic life in this very meditative song.
It's a 5 frames per second shot, too. Like, they really tried to include everything. I mean, forecasting what AAA games will become, frames per second are sacrificed for texture maps and sheer beauty. But the ocean is filled with flora and fauna, manta rays, fishy turtles, and jellyfish. Did you let this play through?
Yeah, it tells you to press start, but if you don't press start, you get a real attract mode at that point in time, right?
At which point, Dream Watch of Time plays, as we get 20-second clips of real-time gameplay from Chrono Cross. And then, if you go through the logo refresh, there's actually if you go through the intro movie again, you get a different camera shot of that 5 frames per second underwater sequence.
Yeah, it seems to go like through a tunnel or something.
Yeah, this time an eel is visible coming out of the reef.
It's almost like there's 2 different worlds.
What a metaphor. Once you finally press start, there is a really good press start noise.
Yeah, that's true.
And then there's a new game option which introduces the player to the select chime, different from the press start noise.
Yes.
Your first question? Yo, bro, you want vibration function?
Well, of course I do, even though
Me too.
It's not quite working for me on RetroArch. By the way, let's discuss how we're playing this game before we start playing the game.
How are you playing this video game?
Illegally, falsely.
You could have ripped your own disc.
I could have. I have owned this game in the past. I'm playing on RetroArch.
Did you sell this in your Great Purge, you fucking bastard?
I think I did.
Ugh.
Eric, we all make mistakes.
I know.
Impulsiveness is a thing that I have. Not with buying things, but selling things. It's weird. So anyway, I'm playing Chrono Cross on RetroArch. I am using a CRT shader called CRT-LOTS-Multipass that makes it look pretty good.
Lilo Dallas Multipass?
Huh? Yeah, sure, why not?
Okay.
And what?
Fifth Element.
Oh, okay.
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
It looks great on my laptop. So all the good-looking screenshots you see us post on Twitter, they're from that.
Yeah, I'm playing on a CRT through an original PlayStation with a SIO device that is a optical drive emulator. No known glitches with that, although Chrono Cross is interesting because when you press start, the pause menu is 480i while the game plays at 240p.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's some weird shifts in resolution that you can observe when you do that.
So if you wanted to play this game in 2020, then you could play it as a PS1 classic.
On a PSP, Vita, or PlayStation 3.
Yeah, I think the most comfortable way to play this would probably be a Vita, right?
Yes, or you can download a ROM or rip your disc and play it through the EPSXE emulator on any PC with a graphics card from the last 15 years.
Or hopefully by the time you're hearing this, Square Enix has come to grips with the fact that they should release their old stuff on Steam and give it a proper, well done
There's
port.
a lot of like machine learning stuff I've seen take on the pre-rendered backgrounds in Resident Evil 2 and Final Fantasy 8, stuff like that really makes it blow up to a modern resolution. But as we'll talk about, there's a lot of motion in Chrono Cross's pre-rendered background, so I'm not entirely sure how that would scale if they applied that stuff to that.
That's true. Just give me a nice CRT filter. I'll be good.
Mm-hmm.
So,
also, I'm using a memory card. Chris is using save states.
of course, I'm also saving, but you know.
Mm-hmm.
We also have to name our character before we start, right?
Yes, you get to name your characters in this game.
I am going to stick with Surge because we're doing a podcast about this, but I think if you try to put in Chrono, it doesn't work.
It doesn't? Is it
Yeah.
one of those things like you can't call Cloud Sephiroth?
Yeah.
So I picked Surge as well, but I've really almost changed that E to a U.
Okay. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
So in our last series on Xenogears, Eric quizzed me on the title of the retranslated chapter titles in Xenogears that we found on the Xenogears and Xenosaga study guide. This time, I will attempt to confuse/own Eric on the chapter subtitles that appear in Chrono Cross. These appear when you save, but according to an export of the script found at chronocompendium.com, there are some that you will not see during the game.
Because there's no save points during those chapters.
Also, I am assuming that Eric's feeble short-term memory may fail him during this process.
Oh, yeah, my memory's dog shit.
Yeah.
I have 20 pages of notes for what we're talking about tonight.
And so he will have to make an honest attempt at guessing this. So the way the chapter titles are constructed in this game is that it is location, vague context for what's going on at that location.
Okay. Is this a multiple choice selection or do I just make shit up?
No, this is a multiple choice. So the first chapter in Chrono Cross is called An Ancient Fort. Is the subtitle Running Through a Sea of Memories, Chasing Phantoms in One's Dreams, or Passing Memories Through a Dark Mist?
Oh, those are good. I'm going to go with Passing Memories Through a Dark Mist.
I'm sorry, you're wrong. Buzzer noise. The correct answer is...
Don't say Sea of Memories, please.
No, it's Chasing Phantoms in One's Dreams.
Nice. Sea of Memories, Bad Bush album.
What was the Good Bush album called?
Razorblade Suitcase.
Before 16 Stone?
16 Stone.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Razorblade Suitcase is really good. So this game starts, it's a cold open from a point that's probably in the future, which is similar to the last game we did.
It is in the future, and do you know why I know that?
Wwhy?
It's a drone shot.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't have those in 2000.
Good point. We're in a giant stone fortress, and spooky sounds open the game.
Yeah, this fortress is surrounded by statues of what appear to be 6 dragons. The
Yes.
camera does a 360 rotation around all of this and displays all the dragons as unique. It then cuts to gameplay. An elevator rises. Presumably, we are inside this massive structure.
Yes, the music begins playing.
What do you think you call it, Chris?
I didn't write it down right here, but I think it's called...
So I'm trying to see if we can sync on these titles or if we've damned ourselves to be different.
I think it's called Brink of Death.
We've got Edge of Death. Uh-huh.
Sure, it's one of those. I'm going off the one that's...
I'm pretty sure they're the same song, we just had different titles.
Yeah, for sure. But the titles that I'm using are the ones that are in the most recently published soundtrack, so I win and you lose.
How music's going to work, I don't think we're going to do breakout sections for this because that's a nice way to get copyright strikes. We're going to play the song as it appears in the game the first time. Then if there's a live version from that recent concert, we'll play that the second time. And then from then on, it'll be either or, depending on what we're talking about.
For sure. But this music is very, very urgent.
Yeah, it suggests we're in a damn rush.
It's also very, very Mitsuda.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
This is absolutely the desperate panic music of Chrono Cross.
Indeed. Our man Serge, he's a boy in casual clothing and a bright bandana.
Mm-hmm.
He's with...
He's got red socks.
Yeah. And I know this. Your third party member in this case is a random character. And
It is?
Yes.
I was gonna like hope that it actually was, because that makes sense with the way the game goes.
Yeah, because I actually had to restart this a couple times because I was fiddling with some settings and I got a couple different characters. So yes, in my case, I am with a cook named Orcha.
Nice.
And who are you with?
Rasley, a floating nymph fairy with purple hair and green witch clothes.
Oh, well, so in your case, Chrono Cross is like, hey man, you're in for some shit. Look at this thing.
Yeah.
And,
Is that even human? You don't know.
Who knows? The character says some form of there ain't no turning back.
For me, she said, what is it, Sergey? She was saying Sergey, and I was like, oh God, did I fuck up his name? Did I put a Y at the end of that?
You dumb bastard.
Because it defaults to change the name. Like, it doesn't default to confirm the base name. And I thought
Yes.
I maybe just didn't know what I was doing and, like, mashed X on Y a bunch of times. But it's a term of endearment for Sergey.
Indeed. We're also joined by Kid, a young girl with a braided ponytail and red clothing. She's also here. She compels us to move forward. Kid is prepared to bring links
Yes.
to his day of, quote, reckoning.
Mm-hmm. Serge and Kid are pirates.
They look like it, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, Serge has a nice outdoorsman vest with orange shoulder pads, but Kid is definitely a pirate.
I think we'll learn in a little bit that Serge is not a pirate, but a fisherman, or a fisherman adjacent. Kid also says, say your prayers, not that it'll do you any good, which is a great line.
And today's going to be a day of reckoning.
Yeah.
She has I thought it was a Cockney accent, but I think she's actually Australian.
It is an Australian accent, and I take the Australian accent at complete 100% face value and not some, like, dumb interpretation of it because the localizer is Australian. So,
My way in my head, I separate Australian from British, is Australians pronounce the word sex as six. And that's like the primer for just how to get your Australian accent. None either of which Chris or I will be imitating on this podcast, I don't think.
No, I might call it words or interpretations, but we're not doing an accent. I might do a couple of pustules, but that's about it.
Yeah, so Kid's in a two-piece red fit with a beige shirt. Her shirt is even shorter than Squall's half jacket. Yeah. I can't tell if she has a skirt or shorts. It's a wrap-type garment. She also has a purple beaded necklace and a purple dagger case.
Yes.
So now we assume that what she said, Lynx is our major antagonist.
It's got to be.
Surely it's not an actual Lynx, right?
Of course not. Probably not. Did you notice the stone doors that close behind us?
What about them?
They are carved out in the shape of a dragon.
Yes. In the next screen we enter, we notice there's pre-rendered background on top of polygonal character models showcasing a giant maze. It's not quite the MC Escher levels of strange optical illusions, but it looks confusing as hell in here. Mm-hmm. Oh, what a time we're going to have at this place.
Gonna be great.
What adventures.
If we go to the left, we pop out on the balcony and we see a thin crystal-shaped thing. Kid says bugger, and it must be some kind of switch.
Well, no, before we get there, you know what we see?
What's that?
Enemies.
Oh, yeah, we do. We just
on screen.
Yeah,
that didn't happen. RPGs have to have random battles. It would break Final Fantasy if you could see enemies.
I don't know if you've played a game called Chrono Trigger.
I hadn't at this point. I'd played Lunar at this point, so I was used to enemies on screen, but not in a Square game.
This game may or may not be a Chrono Trigger sequel. Who knows? Depends on whose quotes you read.
Did you fight anyone before we got to this crystal?
No, I went left immediately.
Okay. Well, I fought someone in the music state Edge of Death. We didn't get our battle music yet.
Right.
But I fought a Cybot.
Yes, it's like a stone golem.
I put Brown Robot from Cyborg Justice.
Okay, that works
Sega
too.
Genesis.
Yours is better. It does take its arm off and beat you with it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
I used to have a rule where if I saw somebody do that in a movie, I would leave the movie. Yeah. Take off an appendage and beat somebody with it.
I agree with you.
I think it happened in Spawn. It shows hit percentages. We're not going to talk about battle system yet, but
yeah.
I want to make a note. It shows hit percentages as your method of attack, and my first one was 69.
Oh, congrats. Nice.
%.
I mean, yeah. So, yeah, I wrote down that the battle system is obviously complex, but we don't need to worry about that right now because this is the intro. One thing I did note, though, is that something I didn't remember is that the lead-in to the battle, in terms of the way the camera swoops around the field, is quite long, and it frames that whole battle.
I want to talk about those later.
It's no longer, or it's not as long as I think Final Fantasy VII, but...
It's a way to mask loading and getting all the character models in there.
For sure.
So yeah, the second screen is the outer tower wall. As you said, a bat flies by. The third screen, we approach an altar with a black element. Surge shuts down when you interact with it. It's on a stone monument structure, and above it is a hexagram with dragons. The stone pagoda we're in also was a hexagram alignment around it.
Oh, cool.
So surely we're inside the hexagram tower.
Yep.
When we press that crystal, it activates a portal 2 rooms back. The portal will teleport only our party, one by one, up to the top of this tower. You know what we find at the top of the tower?
It's the sky?
Wind noises.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The wind noises are added to this game.
Great wind. Everything here is an improvement as far as the sound effects go from our last game, where they all still felt rooted in the 16-bit era.
Yeah, for sure.
middies.
Yeah, they're great. They spend a lot of time on that because they don't have much else to work with. Right?
Yeah, so Kid wonders something when we get up there, right?
What the hell? What the bloody hell just happened?
Yes. She notices how high up we are and asks if this tower is floating.
Yep.
Rasley says it felt like her body passed through the floor.
Yeah.
And Kid notes that this is some sort of fort. Surge does not say shit because he doesn't talk in this game.
Apparently not. Are you okay with the silent protagonists?
I was never a fan of it because I don't like projecting myself onto characters. I want to roleplay a character, not like fully invent my own character and roleplay that.
You want the character to roleplay you.
Yeah, that's it.
See our Patreon's exclusive miniseries on Terranigma.
Mm-hmm. So Kid tells Surge to keep on his toes, and then we walk forward across a small stone pathway and approach a huge wooden door, and then we get our second noise.
Yes, once we proceed to that large door, we are greeted by deep, deep heartbeats.
Square loves heartbeats.
They do.
The fidelity of Chrono Cross's heartbeats and its position as a mature piece of software is notable here, as is the extended frame rate and scene direction. This is a end of life for a system game.
Indeed. The game then shows us what I would call a premonitory FMV.
Yes.
Where Surge appears to be murdering Kid with a knife inside this fortress.
Yeah, the door opens on its own, and then a vision of Kid dead by Surge's feet in a dark room filled with violent energy.
Also noticed a wildcat scream.
Yes. It cuts to Surge's face, and a feline animal screams. It cuts to Surge's hand, and he's holding the bloody knife. The blood is dripping. It cuts back to Surge's face, and his mouth like half smiles in satisfaction.
Did you notice that he takes like a slight breath too with that satisfaction? Like he kind of inhales. And it's really creepy. It's really effective in terms of like, oh God, I am this guy, but at some point I'm going to stab this person who is also in the cover of this game.
Well, to figure out whether or not this game earns this, but I would like to at some point play a game, and I'm sure there is one that I've forgotten, where you're objectively the boy wonder hero of time for an RPG, but secretly, what if bad though?
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I'm not sure this game goes that direction, and there's some justification for it, but like a lot of people, what if he's just an asshole?
There are a couple of games that you could probably name off the top of your head that deal with the like, I'm the good guy, but then halfway through you're like, oh, am I the good guy?
What if bad?
Yeah, which take it for what it's worth, right? But I think it would work really really well in a context like this, where you're trying to figure out exactly what led you to that moment. Which again, what was the start of all this?
Yeah.
When did the cogs of fate begin to turn?
Do you want to ask ourselves that question at the end of every podcast and see?
No. I think every pivotal moment.
Yeah.
We will.
What was the start of all of this?
Yeah. Well, how did we get here?
What kind of radical dream are we enduring?
I don't know. Then the intro scene is over.
Mm-hmm.
Our podcast is over now. The first episode of our Chrono Cross series, I think.
Episode 0 and episode 1 combined.
Oh, let's consult the RealNet, Eric.
Chris, what is the RealNet again for new listeners?
For new listeners, the RealNet is a group of people that are in our Discord server listening to us record live. They hear our fuck-ups. They hear my kids playing Pocky and Rocky before the stream starts. All that kind of stuff. They're here. They're giving us comments.
Initializing RealNet.
In reference to the sound check earlier, J question mark says, whoa, Chronopolis spoilers. Sorry about that.
I remember hearing what this game was about, and then hearing that word and being like, oh, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
What could that possibly be?
It's the name of the game. Cliff Racer says, I mean, what is Chrono Cross known for if not having too many characters?
Yeah, that became his identity, unfortunately, I think.
Yeah. Xenogears has chairs. Chrono Cross has too many characters. Not enough people to sit in the chairs.
Kryptonite.
Yeah, whatever. J question mark says, FakeNet Cross?
Cross what?
I believe it was Cliff Racer that said FateNet at one point in time, but I think if we set the unreasonable expectation of changing the thing's name for every game, it would get too hard at some point, right?
Yeah. We could dig ourselves into a hole where it's just called, especially if it rhymes with fake or fate.
Yeah.
BakeNet.
Can you imagine
for Cooking Mama.
Can you imagine me trying to say FateNet? I mean, I said fake Nate one time. I said fake net. I mean, or fake neck.
You want to talk about names? Look up what Christopher means and know that Chris is an atheist. Eric's last name means he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Violet Spinell says, I think Chrono Cross is older than me. God damn it.
Oh, God.
Don't make me feel so old.
Yeah, more time has passed since I've played it than I was alive at the time.
Cliff Racer says, the Chrono Cross language token system is terrible in both the new sense of bad and the old sense of awesome. I think I agree with that.
Pick a side.
Yeah. Yeah, it's on both sides of them right there, man. Oh, Dent D says, wow, Honeywood is a real one, which I agree with. Honeywood is definitely a real one.
I try to figure out what he was up to now, and I think he does independent contract work on localization. He did something recently, and I remember being surprised by what it was. I'll look that up while you look up.
Cliff Racer says Dragon Quest English localizations are all manually translated. The accents largely used to indicate what region of the world a character is from, and there's very little variable dialogue.
Honeywood and most recently did Ni no Kuni 2.
Oh, okay, cool.
Interestingly, he also helped on Dragon Quest VI for DS, which was done by 8-4. So I guess when he recorded that episode, he was in office helping.
Oh,
on that.
okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
He spent the last, I think, decade at level 5.
J question mark. I like this comment. J question mark says the post-battle heals are a masterpiece, and every RPG since then fails to include it. Should be ashamed.
Yeah,
which is we haven't gotten really into that yet. But if you have unused elements at the end of a battle, you can use them to heal without using.
Yeah, this is a shorter game because it doesn't waste your time.
Violet Spinell says Wild Arms is the third best book flowing in the wind. A couple of people say Dent D, certainly City, and J question mark all confirm that Final Fantasy Tactics also had book flowing pages, which I forgot about. It's been a long time since I played that.
Is that game where you move characters on a grid?
We're going to play that one day, Eric. Cliff Racer, not a fan of Chrono Cross, says, yeah, the game peaks in the opening cinematic and it's all downhill from there. Also, Cliff Racer says, honestly, this dry description will be completely different because it'll probably have the music from the cutscene and it fucking slaps.
Yes.
Which is good.
It's unfortunate. I don't think you hear that music in the game ever, do you? It's just in the opening cutscene.
I think you're right, unless it's towards the end. J question mark says, this poor game gets such a hard time for being expected to be a Chrono game, but not being Trigger again, which is something I think we'll talk about along the way.
I didn't mention it, but a lot of the development interviews said it's not directly related to Chrono Cross because they were worried people hadn't played a game from as long as 5 years ago
yeah.
on a different piece of hardware. Like, I don't think they did direct sequels even like Secret or Saga Frontier 2, Legend of Mana, those aren't direct sequels either.
They used a lot of effort to say this is not a sequel to Chrono Trigger. It is another game in the Chrono universe. But with the amount of lore they include, to me, it still feels like a sequel.
Chrono Trigger had rabid fans at that point, and they were very upset. Yeah.
Dent D says, I'm the rare person who really likes how it re-examines Chrono Trigger, which is why I like it as well.
Yes.
It sort of deconstructs the ideas that Chrono Trigger put forth. Dent D says, do you all plan on discussing spoilers from Chrono Trigger in relation to this game, or how far would you dive into Trigger in order to talk about Cross?
I think it's open season, right?
I think it's open season as well. I mean, we're not going to go out of our way to talk about it, but if we have to talk about Magus, we're going to talk about the things that go along with Magus, right?
And I should read like a primer or watch a video. I don't remember. I only played Trigger once as well, and I don't remember specific things about it.
So in our upcoming episode, our next episode, I have probably already like 6 different notes to say this is a Chrono Trigger reference. So
cool. I have 0. Well, I have one.
You can probably count on me to pick up on all of them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Chris started playing RPGs much earlier in his life than I did and played them many times, whereas I've only played almost all of them once.
Yeah, that's all we had, man. That's all we had back then.
I know. Hey, man, I was just playing Twisted Metal 2 every day for a year.
Hey.
I was living a happy life.
Yeah.
Vector Man was good.
Yeah, Cliff Racer makes a point about this. It says it's probably more shocking then, but I think at this point everyone is familiar enough with Dragon Ball plot beats, such as the protagonist dying and returning and Vegeta joining the party, that they aren't shocking. So that same kind of thing applies to Chrono Trigger, where people are aware of things that happen on there, and nothing happens in Chrono Trigger that is that shocking. Chrono Trigger is a pretty surface level adventure that
I didn't know the future was full of famine and hunger and destruction.
Oh, okay. Well, you haven't been outside today. Thanks, RealNet, for joining us tonight. We will see you in the next episode. It's next week. This episode has been a production of Retrograde Amnesia, recorded on today, August 10th, 2020. Thank you, Mark, for the intro track.
You're welcome, Chris.
Find us on Twitter at Retro Amnesia Pod. Subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts. More importantly, tell your friends. Email the show at retrogradeamnesiapodcast@gmail.com. And if you like us, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/retroim. Get early access, bonus episodes, miniseries, and whatever the hell else we do out there. Until next time, Eric.
Yes, we will kill God.
I guess. I mean, we're going to figure that out along the way.
Yeah.
And now you may go back to sleep. Have you ever studied the Bible before?
Yes, for 4 years.
Okay, we're going to cut that part out. Also, I mean, we're amongst friends now, but we might have new listeners. Like once this thing is released, we don't want to get too, off the beaten path. Anyway, we are also.
I thought it was the 10th. Did we fuck that up?
Yeah, we did fuck that up because I looked it up
Oh.
today.
Damn it.
I was wondering today why we haven't seen any 20th anniversary Chrono Cross tweets from going, because I was going to do that too for clout.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's the 15th.
Eric doesn't know what day it is.
But you accidentally stumbled upon this date as the 1 year anniversary of us starting this podcast. So cheers to you.
Okay, probably for the outtakes, I'm going to start that over again.
Yes, the Squaresoft logo, which harkens back to a time which Square was not tweeting about the Avengers and Lara Croft.
Lara Croft.
Shout out to Gavin Rosendale, I guess. I don't know. Rosdale, whatever the fuck. Is he a good person? I don't know.
He's one of the men that ended up cheating on his wife with the nanny.
Okay, well, fuck him. Fuck him and fuck Erich. Okay.
From Xenogears, not me. Yeah, okay. Just be clear here.
I think we'll learn a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scrolling up. There's 184 new messages since 6:50 p.m.
I took over our Twitch account briefly the other day, and Chris's. There was the last time Chris had used it was it said the title was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for We Are 4 Years Old.
Yeah,
to like fend off any criticism from drive-by assholes.
Right at the time of or early in coronavirus when we were starting to figure things out, and when the kids couldn't see their grandparents, I streamed them playing Turtles in Time and sent the link to my parents and in-laws.
And now, as best as I can figure out in the editing process, here's something from Chris's twin 5-year-olds.
Maybe we should play Smash? Or, I don't know. Hey, neighbor, you can go punch to your face now. Punch, punch, punch. Maybe mine is punch, punch. Or you're the puncher, and I have to kick you in the eye. Hey, maybe you should poop in your face?
Ready?
Just tell him he's from Hihachi Galaga.
That's fine.
Do you know what that is? You play Galaga with Hihachi's fucking head.
Oh, I don't know about that. Why would you tell me that right before we start to do a new podcast series? There's a lot of good Pocky and Rocky energy in here too. I feel good about it.
Please stop talking about Pocky and Rocky.
Okay.